Ladies and gentlemen, respected teachers, and dear friends today, I want to talk about something deeply personal yet universally important: self-discovery. In a world that constantly tells us who we should be, what we should do, and how we should live, discovering who we truly are is both a challenge and a gift. Self-discovery is not just about finding your career path or personal interests. It is about uncovering your authentic self, the values you stand for, the dreams you chase, and the potential that lies within you. The journey of self-discovery is not always smooth. It is filled with questions, doubts, and even failures. But each of these experiences helps us peel away the layers of expectations and fears, allowing us to see our true selves more clearly. When you embark on this journey, you begin to understand what truly makes you happy, what drives your passion, and what kind of life you want to create. It is not about perfection. It is about authenticity. It is about aligning your actions with your inner values and living a life that feels meaningful to you, not just acceptable to others. Know yourself to grow yourself. 600 words. One of the most profound truths about life is this: you cannot grow without knowing who you are. Imagine planting a seed without knowing if it is a rose or a mango tree. You wouldn't know how much sunlight it needs, what soil best suits it, or how much water it requires. Similarly, when you don't know yourself, your strengths, weaknesses, values, and passions, you risk living a life designed by others instead of yourself. Self-discovery starts with awareness. Awareness is not simply knowing your name, your age, or your job. It is about deeply understanding the unique qualities that make you you. For instance, what are the things that light a fire in your soul? What are the activities that drain you completely? Which principles are non-negotiable for you? These questions may seem simple, but answering them honestly can transform the direction of your life. Let's take an example. Imagine someone who is excellent at painting, but follows a career in finance because society told them it is secure. They may achieve success in their career, but a deep void will remain because they ignored their natural gift. On the other hand, when you know yourself, you can grow in a way that feels natural and fulfilling. You won't be forcing yourself into a box that doesn't fit. You'll be expanding in the direction that was always meant for you. Self-knowledge also gives clarity during confusion. When life throws challenges at you, it is your inner awareness that guides your decisions. If you know your values, you won't compromise them even under pressure. If you know your talents, you'll find ways to use them to solve problems. This clarity saves time, energy, and prevents regret. However, knowing yourself is not always easy. It requires courage to face uncomfortable truths. Perhaps you procrastinate more than you like. Maybe you realize you have been living for others' approval. These realizations may sting, but they are essential. Without recognizing weaknesses, you cannot improve. Without identifying strengths, you cannot maximize them. So, how can one begin this journey of knowing oneself? The first step is reflection. Set aside time regularly to ask yourself deep questions. Journaling is a powerful tool for this. Write about your experiences, your emotions, your dreams. Over time, patterns will emerge that reveal your true self. Secondly, seek feedback from others. Sometimes, the people around us see strengths and blind spots we overlook. Constructive feedback is like a mirror. It shows us aspects of ourselves we wouldn't notice otherwise. Finally, experiment with life. Try new things, explore new environments, and push yourself out of comfort zones. Each experience will teach you something about what you like, dislike, or excel at. When you truly know yourself, growth becomes a natural extension. You stop imitating others, and instead, you begin to shape a life rooted in authenticity. Growth without self-knowledge is like climbing a ladder leaning against the wrong wall. You may reach the top, but it won't be the life you wanted. But growth with self-knowledge is like climbing a ladder that leads exactly where your heart wants to go. Therefore, the first and most important step in the journey of self-discovery is to know yourself. Only then can you grow yourself. Only then can you live a life not of survival, but of fulfillment, purpose, and joy. Embrace vulnerability and curiosity if there are two qualities that can completely transform your journey of self-discovery. They are vulnerability and curiosity. At first glance, they may seem unrelated. Vulnerability often feels like weakness, while curiosity feels like exploration. Yet, when combined, they become powerful tools that unlock the deepest truths about who we are and where we are meant to go. Let us start with vulnerability. In today's world, vulnerability is often seen as a flaw. We are taught to put on masks, to appear strong, confident, and unshakable at all times. But the truth is, real strength lies in being open about your struggles, your fears, and your imperfections. Vulnerability does not mean weakness. It means courage. The courage to be seen as you are, without hiding behind walls of perfection. Think about the moments in your life when you learned the most about yourself. Were they times when everything was smooth and easy, or were they times when you were challenged, when you failed, when you felt exposed? Most of us would agree that the greatest lessons came during moments of discomfort and honesty. Vulnerability is the doorway to growth because it allows you to acknowledge that you don't have all the answers, and that is perfectly okay. Now, let's connect vulnerability with curiosity. When you are vulnerable enough to admit you don't know something, curiosity becomes the bridge that leads you forward. Curiosity pushes you to ask questions, to explore new perspectives, and to step outside your comfort zone. It is the fuel for discovery. Without curiosity, we stay stuck in what we already know, even if it doesn't serve us. With curiosity, we begin to see new possibilities. For example, imagine someone who has always believed they are bad at public speaking. Vulnerability allows them to admit their fear instead of pretending it doesn't exist. Curiosity then pushes them to ask, what if I tried a different approach? What if I practiced more? What if I challenged myself to speak in front of a small group first? Suddenly, the limitation they once accepted as part of their identity begins to shift. They move from fear to growth, all because they combined vulnerability with curiosity. This principle applies to every aspect of life. Vulnerability helps you accept the reality of where you are, while curiosity helps you envision where you could go. Together, they create momentum in your journey of self-discovery. Of course, embracing vulnerability is not easy. It requires letting go of pride and the fear of judgment. But when you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you create space for deeper connections with yourself and with others. People are drawn to honesty, not perfection. By showing your authentic self, you give others permission to do the same. And curiosity, it requires humility. It means admitting you don't know everything, and instead of seeing that as a weakness, treating it as an opportunity. Life is vast, full of lessons, people, and experiences waiting to shape you. When you adopt curiosity, every challenge becomes a question, every obstacle a puzzle, and every day an adventure. Together, vulnerability and curiosity are like wings. Vulnerability grounds you in honesty, while curiosity lifts you toward growth. Without vulnerability, you remain closed off, pretending everything is fine. Without curiosity, you remain stagnant, never questioning or exploring. But when you embrace both, you create a powerful balance, the honesty to accept who you are now, and the hunger to discover who you can become. So, if you want to grow on your journey of self-discovery, do not fear vulnerability. Welcome it. Do not silence curiosity. Nurture it. Be brave enough to admit you don't have all the answers, and curious enough to search for them. That combination will lead you to a life of authenticity, resilience, and endless discovery. Failures are teachers. One of the most misunderstood aspects of life is failure. From a young age, we are taught to avoid it, fear it, and even feel ashamed of it. Society often celebrates only success, the trophies, the medals, the achievements, while hiding the countless failed attempts that came before them. But here's the truth. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is the teacher that guides us to success. When you think about the most successful people in history, scientists, leaders, artists, innovators, you will realize that every single one of them failed more times than they succeeded. Thomas Edison, for example, failed over 1,000 times while inventing the light bulb. When asked about his failures, he famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found zeros, zero ways that won't work." That is the mindset of someone who sees failure not as an enemy but as a mentor. So why is failure such an important teacher in the journey of self-discovery? Because it reveals truths about ourselves that comfort and success never can. Failure strips away illusions. It forces us to confront our weaknesses, rethink our strategies, and discover our true resilience. In moments of failure, we learn who we really are, not the version that smiles when everything goes right, but the version that decides whether to rise or give up when things fall apart. Failure also teaches us humility. It reminds us that no matter how talented or intelligent we are not perfect, and that's okay. In fact, it's essential. If we never failed, we would never learn, grow, or evolve. Failure keeps us grounded while pushing us forward. But here's an important point. Failure only becomes a teacher if we allow it to. Some people experience failure and let it define them. They say, "I failed once, so I must not be good enough." They turn a temporary event into a permanent label. Others, however, see failure as feedback. Instead of asking, "Why me?" they ask, "What can I learn from this?" That small shift in perspective makes all the difference. For example, imagine a student who fails an important exam. One reaction could be to give up, believing they are simply not intelligent enough. Another reaction could be to reflect. Did I study effectively? Did I manage my time well? Did I ask for help when I needed it? Suddenly, the failure becomes a lesson, not an end. The same applies to relationships, careers, and personal goals. Failure highlights what doesn't work so that we can discover what does. Another gift of failure is resilience. Every time you fall and rise again, you strengthen your ability to handle life's challenges. Resilience is not built in comfort. It is forged in the fire of setbacks. The people who grow the most are not those who avoid failure, but those who face it, learn from it, and keep moving forward despite it. On the path of self-discovery, failures often point us in the direction we are meant to go. Sometimes a failure is simply redirection. You may fail at something because it was never truly aligned with who you are. That closed door may actually be pushing you toward a path that better suits your strengths and passions. In this way, failure is not a punishment, it is guidance. So the next time you fail, remember this: it is not the end of your story. It is simply a chapter filled with lessons, resilience, and growth. Failure is the teacher that life uses to prepare you for success, for wisdom, and for authenticity. Therefore, do not fear failure. Welcome it, learn from it, and thank it. Because each failure is not a sign that you are broken. It is proof that you are trying, learning, and moving forward on the journey of becoming your truest self. Silence and reflection are powerful in our modern world. Silence has almost become a forgotten art. We live in an age of constant noise, notifications buzzing, social media updates flashing, news headlines scrolling, and people always demanding our attention. We are so surrounded by noise that many of us have become uncomfortable with silence. Yet it is in silence that some of life's greatest discoveries are made. Silence paired with reflection is not emptiness. It is power. Self-discovery requires us to go inward, and the only way to do that effectively is by creating space for silence and reflection. Think about it. If your mind is always filled with external voices, how will you ever hear your inner voice? Reflection is like holding up a mirror to your soul. It allows you to step back, examine your thoughts, and make sense of your experiences. Without reflection, life becomes a blur of events with no deeper meaning. Let's look at an example. Imagine someone running a race but never stopping to catch their breath. Eventually, they will collapse, not because they lack strength, but because they never pause to regain it. Similarly, when we rush through life without taking time to reflect, We exhaust ourselves, missing opportunities to learn from our experiences. Reflection is that pause it allows us to process the past, understand the present, and prepare for the future. Silence and reflection also bring clarity. When faced with a difficult decision, many people look outside for answers, seeking opinions, advice, or quick fixes. While outside perspectives can be helpful, the most honest answers often come from within. Sitting in silence, away from the noise of the world, helps us recognize what truly matters to us. It strips away the layers of influence and expectation, leaving us with the pure essence of our values and desires. Many of history's greatest leaders, thinkers, and creators practiced silence and reflection. Philosophers like Socrates believed that the unexamined life is not worth living. Spiritual teachers across traditions, whether in meditation, prayer, or solitude, used silence as a doorway to wisdom. Even today, successful entrepreneurs and innovators often credit their breakthroughs not to endless work, but to quiet moments of reflection when creativity flowed naturally. But reflection does not happen automatically. It requires intentional effort. In our busy schedules, we must consciously carve out time for stillness. This could mean setting aside 10 minutes in the morning for journaling, meditating at the end of the day, or simply taking a quiet walk without distractions. These small practices allow your mind to slow down, making space for insights to emerge. Reflection also deepens self-awareness by regularly asking ourselves questions. What did I learn today? What challenged me? What brought me joy? What drained my energy? We begin to notice patterns. Over time, these patterns reveal truths about who we are, what we value, and what we want to change. Without reflection, we repeat the same mistakes unconsciously. With reflection, we learn and grow consciously. Furthermore, silence helps us reconnect with the present moment. We often live either in the past, regretting what has already happened, or in the future, worrying about what might happen. Reflection anchors us in the now. It reminds us that this moment, this breath, this experience, is valuable and worth paying attention to. In that awareness, we find peace and clarity. Of course, embracing silence is not easy in a world that glorifies busyness. Some people fear silence because it forces them to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves. But that is exactly why it is powerful. Growth does not come from ignoring what is painful. It comes from facing it with courage. Silence is the safe space where healing and transformation begin. So, if you truly want to know yourself, make silence and reflection a regular part of your life. Step away from the noise, even if only for a few minutes each day. Ask yourself meaningful questions, listen to the answers that arise, and honor them. Over time, you will find that silence is not empty. It is full of wisdom, clarity, and guidance. In the journey of self-discovery, silence and reflection are not luxuries, they are necessities. They are the compass that keeps us aligned with our true path. And when you embrace them, you begin to live not just more peacefully, but more purposefully. Authenticity over approval, one of the greatest challenges in the journey of self-discovery, is the constant battle between living authentically and seeking approval. From the moment we are children, we are taught, sometimes directly, sometimes subtly, that being accepted by others is crucial. We crave validation from parents, teachers, friends, and society at large. While approval can feel rewarding, the truth is, when we live only for others' approval, we risk losing ourselves. Authenticity, not approval, is the key to a meaningful life. To live authentically means to stay true to who you are, your values, your passions, your belief, even when it is uncomfortable, even when others may not understand. It means showing up as yourself without trying to fit into molds that society or other people create for you. But here's the challenge. Authenticity often requires courage, while approval is the easier, safer path. Think about it. When you live for approval, you constantly adjust yourself to please others. You change your opinions to fit in. You silence your passions to avoid judgment. And you make choices based on what will gain applause rather than what feels right. On the surface, this may win you acceptance. but deep inside, you feel disconnected from your truth, from your joy, and from your purpose. On the other hand, authenticity might not always win immediate approval. Sometimes people resist or criticize those who choose their own path. Yet, in the long run, authenticity earns something far more valuable than approval: respect, fulfillment, and inner peace. For example, imagine someone who dreams of becoming a writer but is pressured to pursue a respectable career in medicine because it guarantees approval from family and society. They may succeed professionally, but every day feels heavy because they are living someone else's dream. Now imagine the same person choosing authenticity despite criticism and pursuing writing. Yes, the journey may be harder at first, but it brings joy, alignment, and a sense of purpose. That is the difference authenticity makes. It connects you to life in a way approval never can. Authenticity also strengthens relationships. When you live for approval, your connections with others are shallow because they are based on who you pretend to be. But when you live authentically, the people around you see the real you. Those who stay in your life love you for who you truly are, not for a mask you wear. Authenticity filters out the noise and draws in people who genuinely resonate with you. Choosing authenticity over approval is also essential for self-respect. When you betray your values to gain acceptance, you may win temporary applause but lose long-term confidence. Each time you compromise your truth, you weaken your sense of identity. Conversely, every act of authenticity, no matter how small, strengthens your inner trust. You begin to believe in yourself, not because others approve, but because you are aligned with your truth. Of course, living authentically does not mean ignoring feedback or refusing to adapt. Growth often requires listening and learning from others. But there is a difference between learning from others and living for others. Authenticity means considering advice without abandoning your truth. It is about balance, respecting others without sacrificing yourself. The journey toward authenticity requires courage. It means facing fears of rejection, criticism, or misunderstanding. But the reward is priceless. When you stop chasing approval, you free yourself from the exhausting cycle of trying to please everyone. You begin to live with freedom, joy, and integrity. So in the journey of self-discovery, remember this: approval fades, but authenticity lasts. People's opinions change with time, but your truth remains constant. Do not trade your identity for temporary acceptance. Instead, choose authenticity. Show up as your true self. Speak your truth with kindness and live a life that reflects your deepest values. Because in the end, the world does not need more people who conform, it needs more people who are real. And the greatest contribution you can make to the world is not your imitation, but your authenticity. In the end, self-discovery is not about becoming someone new. It is about uncovering the person you have always been beneath the noise of expectations and fear. It is about realizing that true happiness, purpose, and success begin within. When we dare to know ourselves, accept ourselves, and live authentically, we unlock a life of fulfillment. Yes, the journey may be uncertain and sometimes uncomfortable, but it is the most rewarding journey you will ever take. So I leave you with this thought: the world doesn't need another copy, it needs your originality. Discover yourself, embrace your truth, and let your light shine, not just for you, but for everyone around you. Thank you.